Coming up, as the play-in tournament prepares to wrap up and head towards the NBA playoffs, the Brooklyn Nets continue their offseason agenda. Today, we take a look at Cam Thomas. Will he be back? What will the contract look like? And ultimately, does he, just like Day'Ron Sharpe, have durability issues? We dive in, coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We're 100% free on all those great platforms, and let you know that this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And Doug, we will talk about the play-in tournament games on Friday night. We will talk about the return of one Damian Lillard for the Bucks this playoff season, but we stay in-house and we stay with Cam Thomas, who will obviously be the other draft pick from the same class as Day'Ron Sharpe that has a big offseason ahead of him, potentially from a contract standpoint.
Yeah, it's a big offseason for him. He's going to get paid something, right? So I think there's no question that some money is coming to the tune of maybe not like
dollars.
All-time generational money that some people thought he was going to see for a contract, but I still think there's going to be a wide debate on what kind of contract he's going to get here. And we'll talk about where we think he lands. I think this remains one of the more interesting choices the Nets have to make. They've always seemed sort of non-committal to him. It does not feel like they're overly committal now, but your wallet speaks, and there's a world where we see exactly what the commitment was in the form of a contract, or we see what the committal never was, and they say, hit the free agency and just see what happens, and we'll let that set the market. I think this is a fascinating kind of set of circumstances here. This season did nothing to clarify the Cam Thomas situation, though there is, I will say, he did have a stretch of games near the end that at least I think you can sink your teeth in a little bit into like his overall style of play changing. So we can talk a little bit about that. But overall, I walked away from this season with no more clarity around where Cam Thomas sits in overall NBA value or where he sits in just within in Barclays. And I think if anyone makes the claim, they're just guessing. I don't know how anyone can feel confident one way or the other with this.
And 25 games, 23 starts this season, right? A lot of injuries, hamstrings
brutal.
all over the place. So that's unfortunately a big part of this narrative too. A season prior, 66 games with 51 starts, missed some for injuries there, left and right ankle. So there's some, maybe I mentioned at the top there, maybe some durability factoring in here when it comes to what this contract discussion is going to look like for the Brooklyn Nets this offseason. But if you go back over these last two seasons combined, in 91 games, 23 points, 22.9, I should say, on a 44, 36, 86 shooting splits. So, good numbers, good numbers. And you mentioned the end of this season and a handful of games where when we talk about the playmaker and setting up others and looking at those assist numbers and wondering if he can be more than just, and it's not to be totally negative, more than just a pure score, right? More than just a ball in his hand, or otherwise it's going to be difficult. Another big theme, I think, too, when we talk about that, is the style of his game certainly being influenced by Jordi Fernandez. We talked about this with Noah Clown, and we talked about this with multiple players. He jumped his three-point attempts up from 9.5 per game last year to 12.4 per game this season, obviously in limited action. But that going back to his second season in the league, because his rookie and second year were basically the same, obviously limited action, not a lot of starts, 6 across his first 2 years, but it was basically seven per game. To be now 2 years later and talking about this is the way the NBA is going, but to have taken 5 more three-point attempts per game, saw it dip a little bit, 34.9% from beyond the arc. It's certainly some things that we look at a high level, probably a handful of key areas to focus on. We try to break down, where is Cam Thomas and where do we think he is on the developmental spectrum under Jordi now in the Brooklyn Nets?
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify one number, he took 6 3-pointers a game last year, and he took 7.8 3-pointers this year. So I know it looked like I think you said something like 12.
Sorry. I'm doing per 100 possessions. Let's go ahead and just give you 6.9 last year, 9 this year per 36 minutes. And then his totals jumped. It's hard to really even bother with those comps. Took almost 1,200 field goal attempts last year, with almost 400 of them coming from beyond the arc in 66 games. He had almost 200 in the brief 25 games we saw him this season. Thank you for the catch.
Yeah, definitely per minute, like shot up the 3-pointers. So I'll just go per minute, like, or just overall per game, because he was 31 minutes per game on lock with last 2 seasons. 6 3-pointers a game last year, 7.8 this year, right around 35% this year. And I actually saw the effective field goal percentage go up this year a little bit because he was actually slightly better at the line. So overall, I think like shooting efficiency wise, pretty much right where you want him to be. I think, with the understanding that like he didn't play really with any other like on ball creators, like defenses could kind of hone in on him when he had the ball. Like they just kind of had nobody else. And so I think they put him in some pretty good spots this year to like try to get a little more efficient or like maintain some of that efficiency. And I think he mostly performed as expected here, right? With the biggest disappointment was just he just didn't play enough, right? I think that like that's mostly where it was. And we'll get into the defensive stuff here in a second. But if you look at just the last 5 games of the year, super small sample size for sure. Yeah. But I will say, and usually I'm all about sample. Nice. Yeah, that's a good point. Good point for, but it was all still, the season was a small sample size. But it came after like a narrative shift around him about like them basically calling him out and saying he's just got to pass more. They didn't say those words, but I'm just going to paraphrase essentially what was said, which was like they used a lot of word salad to say you have to pass the ball more and you have to get more assists. And really from those like quotes from Jordy on, his final game, he had 10 assists in 33 minutes. We've never seen anything like that from him. 10 assists, 3, 7, 6. He averaged 5.8 assists per game over the last 5. And it was with a clear to the eye test change in his style of play, especially early. And the reason things hit with guys early, they hit with guys on a mental piece of it, is if they're doing things early in the game where it's like front of mind, he would go into games. He went into these games, these last 5 that he played, he was pass first on these early possessions a lot of passing were in situations that he just did not pass like in other games. And that's because it's like at the beginning of the game, I kind of remember, right? Because I kind of remember that I'm supposed to do it. And then the flow of the game, you kind of you go to default settings and it maybe lessens up a little bit and you're tired and you're going to default to things that you're more used to doing. That's a compliment, by the way. Like they clearly went in and said, you have to get other players involved. You have to have better court vision. Like, let's get going. And he did it. He for sure did it. Like he was looking for players and lobs. He was getting into the lane and actually dishing, like looking off, passing back out to shooters. Like he just never, ever did that. Those shots always went up in every situation. So I thought it was so encouraging those last 5 games, and which is what made the injury even that much more disappointing for him to end the season on a 10 assist game and then get hurt and never play again from March 13th on sucked. That sucks because I really think we were seeing a real serious change that if he had just played the last, even just like 15 more games to end the year, I really think we'd be having a totally different conversation. Yeah, but he just didn't do it enough. And that's the only thing. It's just still only 5 games. So the really positive version of this is he made a fundamental shift in the way he played until he got hurt. And we just didn't see it enough. So I think I'm really encouraged by it. I don't know if it saves him here with the contract, but it's at least encouraging.
Yeah, contract aside, you at least whatever the number is going to be, you have to feel like, okay, we did see that thing, right? We saw that next thing. We've gotten glimpses of it in very, very even smaller sample sizes. But this is a nice little stretch of games, as you mentioned. And I'll say, as we'll get into a couple other key stats here, and then the defensive side of things, the overall. But you mentioned if he just played out the end of this season, he would end up playing probably about 40 games, which would have been nice, half a year. And then I'll throw in like the Dariq Whitehead fun end to his season. For some reason, I'm like, oh, that would have been nice to see like Dariq Whitehead and Cam Thomas out on the court. Because we talk about like Noah Clowney. We talk about the young guys who seemingly every young player had injuries of some kind over the course of this season. There's the version of it where at the end of a tanking year, you get to look out on the floor and see a core group of your young players, Day'Ron Sharpe, talking about yesterday included. And it just would have been like, oh, this is fun. We're seeing some of the young guys. They're going to be a part of the mix with the draft. Coming up here in a second, though, when it comes to Cam Thomas, there's a couple other nice stats on the offensive end that are worth pointing out from the 25-game sample size. Defensively, what did we like? What does he need to improve on? And where do we think he fits in when we look ahead to the draft as well? We'll do that here in just one moment.
Before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at Upwork. Look, scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, You can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, so much more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility and connects them with top freelance talent across multiple industries. You got IT, AI, web development, marketing. It's all there. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and so affordable. You find the right talent. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork connect you with a freelance expert, deliver incredible results. It's got fast and easy hiring. You post a job, it's free and simple. Within a day, you're going to get a ton of qualified candidates to choose from. It's cost effective as well. Visit upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's upwork.com, upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today.
All right, as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the Brooklyn Nets, the offseason, we'll get into the play-in games, we'll get into the playoffs, and giving another series prediction. Doug and I, if you didn't watch yesterday, go check out the full episode because it's lovely. It's about Daron Sharp and what his prospects are. But both Doug and I seemingly fell on the side of not saying they're going to win, but I will say I'm pulling for the Detroit Pistons and Cade Cunningham to make that series interesting against the New York Knicks. Couple of things as we turn our attention to the defensive side potentially here for Cam Thomas. Just worth pointing out that inside of some of the advanced numbers around his season, good to note, again, only 25 games. Free throw rate, that's going to get up to 33%, and that's going back to 2 years prior, 22-23 season. It actually dipped off a little bit last year around that number. We know the assist percentage had to have gone up because he played better in that area of his game, up to almost 23%. That's a significant jump and does represent a year-over-year. Rookie campaign, 9.7, 12.7, 15.7, 22.9. Now, again, only 25 games. But if we're going to look at some of these numbers, and by the way, usage obviously has only climbed year over year for him as well. It's not hard, unlike maybe with some guys. It's not hard to look at the measurables and the things that you can track for Cam Thomas and say, okay, like it's all gone the right direction. And it's also very easy to look past like the early portion of his career when the Brooklyn Nets seemingly drafted him and then also simultaneously like, I don't know, maybe not. Like, so it's always been this muddied thing. And yet he's 23, 24 years old and probably entering what could be a real jump off for him if the Nets end up having success in the draft with some pieces that could really complement what they want to do offensively.
Yeah, look, he's been done no favors by this organization, I don't think. Like, they had not good systematic coaching in place ahead of time. His role was never clear. Like, it just, whether you want to say partly was on him, I'm not really sure. Like, I just know it's never been clear. And you also know.
Sorry. What I'm going to say is, like, because we've heard this from fans before about the idea that Steve Nash at one point had called him out about, like, he's got to be better on defense or whatever it was, got to be better on offense, whatever the situational basketball was. But I'll put it, I mean, listen, one, it is a contract year. So obviously you want to be your best when you're going in to have money talks. But also, I'm going to go ahead and just label, because you mentioned the coaching, the system. Maybe it's just that when Jordy Fernandez came in, it was pretty easy for Cam Thomas to like go, yeah, I respond to what you're coaching me. Like I'm into it. I want to get better and I'm buying in. It doesn't mean you don't always want the best version of yourself. But I think times when you would see Cam Thomas be like, hey, it's me and nobody else, and I'm going to dominate offensive possessions. Maybe that has a lot to do with the fact that I don't totally buy into what you might or might not be coaching when it comes to the X's and O's.
Well, they really weren't running an offensive system.
Well, yes.
I mean, they kind of had one. Like, they were just kind of, that really didn't have really a good balance of an offensive system. There was no bones to anything, really. I mean, with Nash, I guess they didn't need it because it was like a KD, Kyrie, Harden show. And at that point, it's like, well, we can kind of roll the balls out and these guys really can just cook. So no problem. And then with Vaughn, we just never saw anything except that they weren't running pick and roll with like Dinwiddie. And then they got away with that because they made Dinwiddie stand in the corner. And then it was just kind of like all over. Like they just weren't really running anything with any consistency. So I think from that standpoint, like I said, like, Jordy Fernandez gets in there and there just is more of a system that they're clearly running. It's much more motion. There's considerably more screens being set. Like, they are trying to get guys running into action on the ball and just putting guys in the pick and roll and trying their hardest to at least get movement and spacing around a group of players who are talent deficient compared to most of the league. And the offense wasn't good, but I mean, my God, like, look at the players they had. It's like, what was the expectation here? So I think from Cam Thomas, this is a pro Cam Thomas statement here. Like, I don't think he had, even if you thought like the attitude or like the defense or whatever, like, it's just very clear that it's very clear to me, at least early on, he didn't play as much as he should have been, considering what the Nets needed for long stretches. Like, that's pretty obvious. Like, maybe he shouldn't have been playing 35 minutes a game. But I mean, the year he played 16 minutes a game in his second year when they like kind of needed, I mean, it was a total joke. So I will say, though, on the defensive side of the ball, that's still a major problem. Like, while I think the effort was there more this year, he continues to get lost on defense. He really can't guard anybody. Like, he's just not a good defender at all. And you couple it with not like always exactly knowing where he should be. He gets lost off ball sometimes. Like, if stuff happens weak side, it's like kind of a problem. The off court stuff is, I mean, his splits are hilarious. So they're clearly way better on offense. They're 117 compared to 107 on offense. This isn't just him, but with him off, they had a 115 defensive rating. With him on in 708, 124 defensive rating. I mean, they got torched, torched when he was on the court. I don't think it's all his fault. And it was, but I think when you couple the on-off court stuff with the idea that it just doesn't pass the eye test either, that the defense, it's not nothing that he's not a good defender. It doesn't count for everything, but you can't just ignore it. Like, you can't ignore the part where he gets killed on defense, and the team has major, major problems. And last thing on this, one thing that's always going to hurt him a little bit is that when you're a small off-ball guard, it's always going to be hard to have a good defense with that. And maybe it's not always your fault, but it just means you're basically starting two small guys in the backcourt, because the point guard's probably going to be smaller on the smaller side also, and maybe not your best defender either, because most point guards aren't. When you just start with 2/5 of your team in the backcourt struggling, probably, right, it's always going to be a problem on defense.
5 and under, whatever.
That's what I mean. Like, two small guards, and it's just going to be a problem. Like, you think back to I'm going long here, but think back to the Steph days with Clay. It's like, well, yeah, Steph's a small guard, and Clay was a completely elite defender that could guard opposing one. He can't anymore, but he can like guard every opposing one, like at an elite level. Okay, and he could shoot the shit out of the ball. So like then you can really win. But they're never going to have that in this version. So I don't know. Anyway, does that land? I kind of went long there.
No, so this is where I think we start to turn our attention. We talked about this a bit with Day'Ron Sharpe and how the draft would impact it, right? And this is going to bleed over into our closeout segment for sure. And we'll talk a little bit about NBA playoffs. But the reality of, and that's why we talk so much about, hey, that assist rate and that sample size over those 5 games, that's pretty critical. Why? Because if you're going to dream on it, and I'll throw out a name that everyone got excited about over the course of the tournament, and we've heard a lot of fans would be excited to see the Brooklyn Nets potentially get him, and Jeremiah Fears. Well, if you're going to bring in a 6'4" point guard, it doesn't matter how elite the offensive talent is. And I know that he does some things defensively as well. Scrappy. Okay, great. You're going to have 2 guys in your backcourt comprising 6'4" and below that really are going to have a hard time defensively. You're going to get absolutely destroyed. So then you're going to be ultra reliant on 3 other players. So if we're having this conversation, and Doug will give his reply on the other side of the break here, the question becomes, can you thrive as an organization going forward with Cam Thomas in anything other than maybe a pseudo point guard role, even if he's not the best at that? How much is it going to matter the way you build out the rest of the roster to really value the elite scorer that he is, the elite shot taker that he can be? But you have to be able to have a defense that can have balance on that end of the floor. And we know that at least right now, Cam Thomas is going to struggle in that area. Coming back on the other side, Doug's response to, if it's possible, to have a 2-guard, 6'4" Cam Thomas on a team that wants to win over the next couple of seasons. We'll do that here in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, tell you about our friends over at Monarch Money. Look, you check your bank account. You ever wonder, where did that money go? It's dining out. It's online shopping. It's entertainment. It can be easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, Chief Financial Officer for yourself, giving you full visibility, control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You track all those accounts, investments, spending in one place. You stop managing your money and start building wealth, baby. You start using Monarch Money. You're going to realize how much you might be spending on food delivery. It's going to make it easier to budget smarter and save more. You're not going to be judging. You're going to be judging those other multiple apps, and you're not going to be juggling multiple apps. I got there. You can use Monarch Money to check your finances, track spending, even plan those long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. monarchmoney.com.
All right. As we tie a pretty little bow on today's Locked On Nets episode, we're going to get into the playoffs here in a minute, maybe some predictions around playing games as well. But as I was saying there, is it possible, right? What needs to happen for the Brooklyn Nets maybe in the draft to think about, we have Cam Thomas, he is an elite scorer, and now we have a complementary piece that helps that backcourt be better structured on both ends?
Yeah, okay, look, so there's multiple things that can happen that can help with this case here, and where the defense is less of a liability. You draft Cooper Flagg, right? And you have Cooper Flagg and Nick Claxton and like Noah Clowney at the 3 or something like that. And all of a sudden, like you're not as, Noah Clowney in year 3 or something. And all of a sudden, like you're not as worried about what's happening in the backcourt. Okay, so just for starters, there's things that can mitigate some of these issues. You go to get draft Dylan Harper, a big point guard, a bigger point guard. Like if he can get there, like sort of defensively and be able to guard up a little bit at times, right? Like there's other things that can happen at Kneppel, like not exactly a pure point guard, but could be on balls, a little bit bigger and longer. Like, so there are guys here that could help the case, I think, and you wouldn't be worried about it as much. You're also maybe saying to yourself, well, 2 years of Cam, a 2-year contract. We're not going to be contending in 2 years. We need someone to get out there. Fans like them. Like there's a case to be made to just do it.
Not a hard internal sell to bring back Cam Thomas, right?
Yeah, like he's like fans do like him, and they're going to need someone to score anyway, and they're not going for it for the next couple of years. And so I think there's lots of versions of this that just work out kind of fine. And by the time you're willing to like really make a move, you've really decided on him one way or the other, right? So I think those are versions. And like I said, there are other players out there that you can pair him with and be okay, probably. It's when you pair him with like Dennis Schroeder or Keon Johnson, it's like, well, or D'Lo, it's like, well, okay, night. Like you're like it's over in the backcourt. Like you'll never stop anybody, and they can't fight over screens enough. They can't stay with their guys. Like, so anyway, I think there are versions where it gets better. I just know the versions where it doesn't look good is if that point guard is on the smaller side or is a bad defender. You really can't make up the difference enough with this team. So I don't know. It's damning with faint praise. I think that ultimately, I mean, what's your prediction here? What do you think? What do you think what do they do with Cam Thomas? We can probably land this plane a little bit. Like,
and I want to lump the Day'Ron Sharpe call into this as well, because we didn't do it on yesterday's episode. But I think they bring him back, because I just don't think, for better or worse, the injuries this year does make it easier for the market to be a little bit softer. I don't think any team is going to come blowing the doors off. Nets have plenty of money to do it. You mentioned it. They don't have a lot of scoring right now on their roster. They have no scoring on their roster. So the draft can do a lot with that. Great. But it's not going to hurt to have Cam Thomas on your team. And I think, whether fans want to hear this or not, you find yourself at a trade deadline over the next couple of years and Cam Thomas is under contract and a team needs a 6th man coming off the bench in a playoff run, he will be valuable. Like, I think there will be a trade market for him if the Brooklyn Nets look to roll over the roster. But my assumption here is that they're bringing back Cam Thomas this offseason. I see this being way closer to like the Nicholas Claxton version of it, where it's like, yeah, contract and like no worries, as opposed to when we talk about Day'Ron, we can get to that here briefly before we close out, where I think there's a real world where he isn't back on this team.
I think it's going to be something like 3 to 4 years at like 60 million, a little more. And AAV is like in that 15 to 17 range. Like that sounds like 18, maybe. That's my gut. Some people are going to come and say that's low. I just can't see them paying. Like, even if you're just using the guys in the team, like, do you think he's going to get bigger? I know the salary cap's gone up and everything, but like, do you think that he's going to get paid more than Cam Johnson? Cam's 4 for 90. Claxton's 4 for 100. Like, do you think they're going to pay Cam Thomas more than they paid these guys? Like, I just don't see it happening. So even if we're just using those two guys as the beginning part of the example here, like, I just can't see them doing it, even with the understanding that everything's gone up a little bit. And I think that 15 a year AAV sounds right to me. And so that's like 4 for 60, and I'll be prepared to be a little low. But
yeah, I'm
sure someone's going to come in here. Someone's going to come in here and be like, "Oh, he deserves way more." Okay, great. Maybe he does. I'll be wrong. Like, whatever. Yeah. Do you see another team coming like way over the top for Cam Thomas? Like, I just don't see it happening. I just don't see where this is coming from. And last thing, and then you can do it, and you can close out with everything. The other guys that I just mentioned, we were like positive the Nets wanted to resign those guys. We said this before. There was no there was no confusion about whether or not. Now, the only confusion about Claxton and Cam was like if anyone's going to come over the top. The Nets want those guys.
Yeah.
And they outbid themselves. There's been no hint at all that that's what's happening here with Thomas. So I'm saying 3 or 4 annual average salary at something like 15 million.
Yeah, I'll say that it's like if for a 4-year deal, like 4 for 70. Like I think they give him a little bit extra because they have the cap space and it can be kind of symbolic a little bit.
Maybe like a team option at the end. Maybe a team option at the end or something like that.
A 3-year with a 4-year team option, something like that. Like, where hey, it could be good for both sides. And by the way, this is big money for Cam Thomas. Like this is life-changing money, this contract. So, and that doesn't mean that he's going to walk to the table and his agent's going to go, hey, whatever you think's fair, it's totally cool. They're going to fight for every dollar, but at the end of it, it's going to be a life-changing contract for Cam Thomas. Very quickly, we didn't say it yesterday. Do you think Day'Ron Sharpe is back? I'll go first with it. This is not a good comp based on performance, but I think just like the Knicks went through it with Hartenstein, where another team came with an offer and the Knicks couldn't financially afford to be able to match or keep him. But I think a team actually will give a contract offer to Day'Ron Sharpe for like the role that he can serve for a team where the Nets go, oh, okay, like that maybe you can walk away. And I think the Nets have real plans when it comes to the draft and looking at that board in the first round and believing they can kind of fix that position a little bit where they clearly didn't do it perfectly with Nick Claxton and Day'Ron Sharpe as complementary pieces.
Restricted free agency hurts both these guys. So I'm not even sure they get stuff from other teams. I say Day'Ron's back. And I'm always going to asterisk, like I said yesterday, which is if they draft a center, I do not think he's back. If they draft the center with that first pick, whatever pick they have first, I do not think he's back. But if they do not, I do think he's back. So I know that.
And by the way, with Cam Thomas, also it's like anyone they draft, you're probably going to go, oh, that could be really good for Cam. You know what I mean? Like they would talk about, right? So
he's not at risk of the draft. He's not at the risk of the draft like Day'Ron is. Because he can kind of be out there with a few other different guys. Day'Ron, you're just not going to play him and Claxton or these other centers together. It just hurts. You run out of minutes. So that's where I think he's like, that's more of a problem for him.
Let's hit a couple of these on the way out the door. We got plans. They're finishing it off. Miami at Atlanta, Dallas, trying to rewrite that script for the season at Memphis. I'm taking Miami. Like I'll take Miami there. And on the vibes, I'm taking Dallas as well for that one.
Dallas thing's so funny. I think Ja's going to play it. I'm going to take Memphis in that one. And how could you ever bet the Hawks here? I know it's at home, but like Trey and the Hawks versus Spo and anybody, I guess, and they've had a bad season, but like I just don't see it happening. So I think it's the Hawks there. I mean, they're slight favorites. The Grizz are -6. The Dallas thing would be so funny though. I will say from content standpoint, rooting for Dallas hard. Like I never want anything good to happen for Nico Harrison ever again because I just think it was just such a clown show what they did. But I think from a hilarity standpoint and just to keep the content train rolling over there, it would be pretty damn funny for them to get. And there's like, it's awesome. It sucks too because there's like not the path they would have to win that whole series that they would play the Lakers. Oh, is there a path for that? Anyway, it's just one of these things. Like that would be the funniest thing ever. But I'll just go for Dallas for the vibe, for the anti vibes.
And now we're going to come in like at the end of the weekend, but everybody's going to get underway here. We know the TBD matchups. But like Saturday, Milwaukee at Indy, Damian Lillard not going to play on Saturday, but is going to be coming back.
He's back.
Yeah. LA at Denver, Detroit at Knicks. We talked about that. Minnesota at LA. Dame coming back makes it interesting. I don't know if it's like enough for me not to look at Indiana as being the favorite to come out of that matchup. Any of those that jump out to you after obviously Detroit, New York, we already talked about, but like LA, Minnesota, anything that you're like, hey, maybe we talked about this yesterday. Oh, Cade Cunningham, can he be the best player in the series to make it interesting? Going to be really hard for Ant-Man to be the best player in the Lakers series with Luka, with LeBron, and maybe make that more interesting than people think it is on paper.
Man, I saw the Dame news and I flew over to our friends over at FanDuel to be like, let's go here because he was not expected to play at all. And they were pretty decent underdogs going. And I actually was already thinking I was like, Giannis, I get why they're underdogs. But like, he's still the best player in the series in a first round. And it's not like, and Indiana's like more of a sum of their parts team. And so Giannis was an absolute total beast for like the last month of the year.
Yeah.
So right when I saw that, I was like, "No!" And they had locked it. So our friends at FanDuel, quick,
Yeah.
they got a fast trade over here. I think Milwaukee takes that. I think they're gonna ride high in the Dame vibes. And Giannis was so damn good over this final like stretch of the season. As Nets fans, I'm sure we're watching because they just kind of like won a bunch of games where the Nets had that pick. But they won their last 6 games. The Nets had the pick. Giannis averaged. I mean, these are wild numbers. Giannis averaged 32, 12, and 12 over the last 6 games.
Yeah.
I mean, basically averaged that like for the maybe the last 12 games or something. 10 games. I mean, he was an absolute juggernaut. So I think I like Milwaukee in that series. I think they're still slight underdogs though.
And I'll jump over to the Golden State Warriors, Houston Rockets. That's like
a great series.
That's like
that one's like appointment television.
Fun. Yeah.
The Rockets have a guy in Amen who has clamped Steph this year. And so the part where they have a dude who can really give Steph the business, but like also the Warriors might just also have like the 2 best players in the series and Steph and Jimmy. I mean, where you want to rank those guys. I mean, Steph's the best player in the series, but like wherever you rank Jimmy,
like
Jimmy
older
had the best.
stars
Did you see
like a lot of young, some of their parts team in the Rockets really like it's a good narrative around a team that obviously is, pedigreed in with all the championships they won, even though they look different now.
Oh man, I got to get this. I got go say something here. I'm gonna get this Jimmy quote. Jimmy had an amazing quote about Steph.
So the ones we're not going to talk about are going to be Orlando going to Boston. No knock on them. I mean, listen, once upon a time, the start of the season, I may have felt a little bit differently about it. And then same thing. It doesn't really matter. You got Cleveland. They're waiting on that Miami-Atlanta matchup. I assume it, will be Miami. All good. That in the East, I expect those to kind of come out the same way. So Saturday is interesting, though. I think the Clippers, by the way, too, the Clippers-Denver series is just fun. You got the fact that the Denver Nuggets are firing their coach right at the end of the season. Clippers are a funky team, man. Like kind of, James Harden just resurrecting himself in another new spot after everything that went on. I think that the West, if I'm looking these over, I shouldn't really say that. With Dame coming back, it makes that series with Indy more fun and more interesting. This is a pretty good slate, I would say, of first round matchups, regardless of the number, the 1 seeds that are waiting on the other teams. This is about as good as you can get in terms of first round NBA basketball, where you feel like, hey, turn on any series, you're probably going to get a really good game. I think across the board for the most part.
I blew it. I can't find this quote. It was. No, I got it. Oh, just in time. Here we go. Jimmy Butler on the Warriors. I think any team has a chance when I'm on the team, but I know that every team has a chance if Steph is on the team. And I was like, oh, they're gonna win. It was like, and they were so freaking good in that playoff game too.
Totally bullish on himself, but then in the same quote, humble. In deferring to one of the all-timers, right? Like, which is incredible.
He called himself Robin and he called Steph Batman. I was like, they got a chance, dude. I never buy into stuff like quotes like that because I think they're mostly pretty dumb. And that one I was like, baby, I like that. All right, we're gonna get out of here. Make sure you subscribe.
Chip on his shoulder, right? Like rejected out of Miami. Like there's some juice there. Come on now.
Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets wherever you listen to the podcast. Make sure you subscribe over on YouTube. Leave a comment as well. It could be mostly nice, but hey, even leave a mean comment. I don't care. We'll read them all. Thanks for listening, but make sure you subscribe to both.
By the way, happy Fan Take Friday. We got a little lost on this one this week. Playoffs are kicking off underway. Get all your comments in, as Doug says. And oh, by the way, the eyes are the nipples of the face. And that's Anna Faris.
One of the all-time great posts. Back again next week talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball, playoff basketball. Yeah.